favorite thing at the DMZ was the tunnels because it went really deep and it was cold and interesting. I thought the most interesting thing about the DMZ was the infiltration tunnel. I liked it because it taught me so much about North Korean history. My favorite thing at the DMZ was the tunnel. I loved it because it was deep.
Anything else? Is that it? Because it was deep? Okay, good job.
World Schooling North Korea at the DMZ.
The thing that I found the most interesting about our DMZ tour was being inside the zone that is neutral and seeing the barbed wire on both sides and seeing just such a different perspective about how other people live in the world.
My favorite thing about the DMZ tour was actually just being able to look through binoculars and see that hermit kingdom that we hear so much about on the news all the time, 24/7. Put a huge, new, fresh perspective on everything.
I'm 8 months old and I've been to North Korea.
We are diapers on a plane.
All right, welcome to podcast number 19. This is week 9 in South Korea. Yes, we are still here. We are going to be wrapping up. We'll probably finish a few more episodes at home, but we just went to North Korea.
That's right, we went to North Korea. Americans in North Korea.
North Korea. You might be saying to yourself, wait, Americans can't go to North Korea. But we went to North Korea and we are a family of 6 Americans.
Okay, maybe we didn't actually step foot in North Korea, but we came about as close as humanly possible for a family of Americans to go, which is about 100 meters away from North Korea.
And it was pretty incredible. It was one of the most amazing world schooling field trips that we have ever been on. And it was really fascinating to be able to learn about the history, hands-on, up close, and see everything that there was to see and learn about right at the root of where everything happened.
Yep. So far on this Korea trip we're on, I think this is definitely my highlight as far as everything I've learned and experienced and seen was the North Korea visit.
Yes, absolutely. So how close were we to North Korea?
So we were inside one of the tunnels we'll talk about in just a moment, but we were about 100 meters from North Korea.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the tunnels, but you could actually see through a window and you could really see it. Now, it wasn't the first time we saw North Korea because Seoul is actually only about a half an hour away from the border between North and South Korea. So you can see it along the bus ride up.
Yep. So the way we went there is we went on a tour of the DMZ, which is the demilitarized zone. So there's a stretch of land that separates the border of North Korea and South Korea. Is in between that is a 2-kilometer section called the demilitarized zone. Yay, she can say it, I can't.
And it's 2 kilometers from north to south.
Mm-hmm.
East to west, it spans the entire width of the continent, or the peninsula.
Yeah. So no military or some limited amount of soldiers, but no military activities allowed in that zone. And it's been that way since 1953.
Yes, so 70 years. So it is just a vacant spot of land. It's barricaded on both sides by fences and barbed wire. You cannot get through. All right, so there's no military activity whatsoever there. So this is only for people from South Korea to go visit. The North Koreans do not visit there. You can see a whole host of things. You can see an infiltration tunnel. You can see a peace park. You can see a train station. And you can see an observatory where you can both view into South Korea and into North Korea. So we will go into detail about all of those things right now. Episode 9. We went to North Korea.
Yeah.
All right. So like Gabriel mentioned, we did choose a tour. Now, there are several tours that you can do, and all of them kind of range in between about 55,000 won to about 80,000 won. And our biggest problem with choosing a tour was all of the reviews said that they all end with 2 hours of shopping for ginseng and amethyst. And 2 hours on top of a 6-hour tour just kind of sounded like torture.
Yeah, and everyone said the tour was kind of rapid, and then they really didn't want to do the ginseng tour. So we did our best to find one without it.
So we chose a no shopping tour, and it was only 40,000 won, which is just a little bit shy of about 40 American dollars. And the problem was it was only available on Sunday, and we really wanted to go on Saturday. Now, when you have a family of kids, you don't necessarily book things in advance. At least we don't, because it always feels like something's bound to happen with your kids. They'll get sick, or something will come up, or you can't make it. So we tend to book things like big ticket items. We plan, and then we tend to book them right before the last minute. So they didn't have anything available on Saturday. So we called Viator to ask if they had one, and they were able to get us in on one for really Saturday. Yeah, so there was a little bit of questioning about if it was going to be shopping or not. But that is why we chose that one. It ended up being 188 US American dollars for our entire family of 6 to go tour the DMZ and see North Korea.
Yes, and we had been debating for a long time whether we should do a self-guided tour or have an actual tour, and we thought somewhere like that where we really were unfamiliar and the military is involved, we really wanted to just be on a guided tour around that. But we have read that you can go on a self-guided tour.
So what does a self-guided tour look like? From what we can tell, you take a train out to the Yongsan Station, which is out in Seoul, and then from there you can catch a train out to the Dorasan Station, which is one of the stops on the guided tour. And it is the last train stop that you can take before you get to actual North Korea.
And it's the subway line actually goes all the way up to Pyeongyang. So it goes into North Korea, but the only functioning stop is the Dorasan Station.
Yeah. So if it were open, which they agreed to open the Dorasan Station in 2003 in an attempt towards reunification, that was both on the South Korea and the North Korean side. It was a joint agreement. When that one is open to go into North Korea, it will be part of the Transcontinental Railroad. It will be the most far easternmost train stop on the Transcontinental Railroad, and it will link all of Asia to all of Europe. It'll go all the way through. So that would be pretty incredible. So it was a pretty big monumental occasion for that railroad station to be opened. So if you take the self-guided tour, you'll get to go to the Dorasan Station, and from the Dorasan Station, you'll board a bus to do all of the rest of the stops.
Yes. And so that's a self-guided thing. And I haven't told Catherine this yet, but I was actually talking to the missionaries today at church, and they are going to the DMZ tomorrow. And so they didn't know what they were doing. They're having a friend take them up, but they're going to go to the Dorasan Station in the morning, and then to get a tour there, an actual paid tour, costs about $10 per person. So that is probably, in hindsight, what we would have done, because that's a lot cheaper, and it would be kind of cool to take the subway up to Dorasan Station.
Okay, so why else would that be a good idea?
Because on our bus tour, we were rushed.
We were so rushed. We were sweating buckets, just running place to place to place. Like, you didn't have enough time to see what you wanted to see, to take it in, to answer questions. And that was frustrating to me because traveling with little kids, they have a lot of questions, and this is a heavy topic, and I wanted to be able to address them with them.
So let's jump into that. So we woke up early around 7 o'clock, took a taxi into Seoul where we met our bus stop, which is all pretty fluid, but we left around 8:30.
7:30.
7:30. And got there about 8:30. We left on the bus. We were the last pickup, which was nice, and then we drove up to the border of North Korea. From there, we went to the Peace Park. We talked about that first, but they only gave us 20 minutes to walk around, and it is not enough time.
No.
But so what are some of the things we saw at the Peace Park?
All right, so at the Peace Park, you can see parts of the Berlin Wall. You can see flags where people have put names of people that they know in North Korea that are stuck there. And there's a whole wall of flags. There is the old steam train locomotive. So South Korea used to take supplies up to North Korea, and that was an agreement that they had with North Korea until one day North Korea decided they didn't want them anymore, and they shot the train down. And the train was dead.
And it was dead, and it stayed there until finally years later it was moved to this Peace Park where we could go see it.
Yeah. You can also see a bunch of statues. You can see some memorials. There's a beautiful park with benches. There's a building, but it wasn't open, kind of a museum, but it wasn't open on the weekends.
Yep, and they also had the Freedom Bridge.
And, of course, the Freedom Bridge, yes. And so what is the Freedom Bridge?
So the Freedom Bridge is after the ceasefire happened, there was about 10,000 South Korean soldiers who were prisoners of war on the north side, and when they released them all, they all walked over the Freedom Bridge. The bridge that separated North and South Korea.
So when you see images of the Freedom Bridge, a lot of times you'll see images of this bridge going over the water. So that is actually the train bridge. That is the bridge that we just talked about, the Dorasan, that leaves from the Dorasan station, and it looks like it links up with the Freedom Bridge. So originally that bridge did link up with the Freedom Bridge, and that's what they walked across. But the remaining part of it is just an old wooden bridge, and you can actually go walk out on that and view into North Korea and see the bridge that the train takes. So, and it's very moving. Definitely
wish we had some more time there to walk around. We were really rushed and actually about 10 minutes late getting on our bus, so we probably got some dirty looks. And we're lucky we didn't get left, because someone got left later on who didn't show up to the bus in time.
Yes. So a good, interesting note is that if you are late to your bus tour, the Peace Park is not in the DMZ. The DMZ doesn't start until you get through the tunnels, and your bus cannot leave you once you get into the DMZ, because once you get to the DMZ, the military has to come onto your bus. They have to look at all your passports. They have to do a passenger count. If you enter the DMZ with a different count than you leave it with, you're not allowed to leave. You have to stay. So you can technically fudge the times a little bit. I don't know how that's frowned upon, but just as a point of note, don't miss your tour at that point, because you're going to make everybody suffer on your tour and probably not be the most liked person.
So after the Peace Park, we actually entered the demilitarized zone. And what did we pass on the way to the third tunnel, which we'll talk about in just a second?
So you go up, we actually passed through the JSA. At the beginning of the video, we mentioned that we came the very closest that you can to the North Korean border. Technically, we came the closest that you can with children under 11. If you have children older than 11, then you can go to the JSA, which is the Joint Security Administration. And it is the building that hovers. Half of it is built on South Korean soil, and half of it is built on North Korean soil. It is where all the peace meetings take place. Yeah. And how many peace meetings have there been since the division 70 years ago? 4.
There's only been 4?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So 4 meetings have taken place. One was in 2000, 2007, last year, and then early this year in May.
Wow.
And, of course, as you know, President Trump just went there too.
Yeah, kind of a big deal. And that was on one of the weeks we almost went.
Yes.
So it's a good thing we didn't.
One of the reasons we wait to the last minute.
Yes.
So we could not have gone to the JSA again because it is technically part of North Korea. They do require that children be of a certain age, and I guess that also indicates maturity level.
Yeah, so inside that, there's that room. I guess if you were able to go into that room, they tell you that if you walk over to the other side, the North Korean side, and enter that door, you're on your own.
Yeah.
So basically, you're in North Korea. If they grab you and take you, goodbye.
Yeah, I kind of think that's just a silly old thing.
Well, no. We have varied opinions on that. Okay.
But one more thing about that is where the soldiers face off.
Yeah. So that road was blocked, so that's an actual road that will go to North and South Korea.
Yeah, so you can see, so as you turn around the corner, you can see the blue JSA building, and then you can see the road that goes into North Korea. Now, of course, it is barricaded. Now, it was opened for the Olympics just a few years ago, and both sides, or not both sides, but North Koreans came into South Korea.
And I've also been told today that occasionally they'll open that road for like some of the K-pop bands to travel through and do concerts in North Korea.
Okay, so
a lot happens there, more than we're let on in U.S.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. So here in the U.S., we're not here in the U.S. We're here in South Korea. In the U.S., all we hear all day long is that North Korea is going to nuke the world, and that's all we hear. But in South Korea, all the talk is about reunification.
Oh, yeah.
And it's talked as if it's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
It is just all the time.
So our impression is that the South Koreans love the North Koreans like brothers and sisters, and they really want unification. And so if you asked anyone here, whether it's my students or anyone coming down, they're always talking about any day now, the two halves are going to be united again. And so it's really hugely different than what we hear all the time in the U.S. And so Catherine and I have very conflicting, we're not going to go into them, of course, but we have very conflicting opinions on what's true and what's not, and what kind of propaganda we're hearing, because there's definitely propaganda from both sides.
Yeah.
But I will tell you from our first-hand experience that everyone's always talking about unification. It's going to happen at any moment. And we're hearing more and more about things like K-pop stars and band members going and giving concerts and stuff in South Korea. We actually just read an article about North Korea is starting to really try to have more K-dramas like they have, going more popular.
Kim Jong-un is actually lifting some of his bans on the on the K-dramas and allowing some of them to be seen there in North Korea.
So who knows? So my theory, I'll bet before we see a unification of the two countries, they'll probably allow chocolate pies back in North Korea.
Now
anyway.
that is a tender subject.
So
you turn from the road that they opened up for the Olympics, that is the actual road. I'm not even sure if we were closer than 100 meters at that point, but I mean, we just literally clipped those as you go up to North Korea, and you follow those around until you get to the third infiltration tunnel. And what are the infiltration tunnels?
So that was, after 1953, when the ceasefire happened, North Korea built tunnels to go underneath to South Korea. And there are 4 of them that are known. So we went to the third one.
The third one is the biggest, it's the largest, it's the easiest to walk down. And a defector that came from North Korea made them known to the South Korean government.
So he was one of the surveyors who helped create the third tunnel, and then when he defected to South Korea, he let everyone know about it.
So, of course, he didn't know specifically where they would be able to find it on the South Korean side, because, of course, he was digging it from the North Korean side. But he indicated, the general area that it was in, and then the South Koreans had to survey. Now, interesting point of note, it's only 45 kilometers away from Seoul, so they made it very far, and they could have been very successful had it not been stopped.
Now, that being said, they think there are 10 tunnels, but only 4 of them have been discovered. And so and
they're so large that they say they could move 30,000 troops in an hour from North Korea over to South Korea and be in Seoul. That was their ultimate goal, is to be in Seoul with 30,000 troops. Surprise!
Which is crazy because it's so tiny.
It is so tiny.
So they said they could march like soldiers 2 by 2 in it. But man, I was like bent clear down.
Yeah, so you get to this tunnel. You will not find any pictures of it because
you're not allowed to have cameras. Okay, so we don't have any pictures or videos of the tunnel because you're not allowed to have cameras in it.
Yeah.
And they say it's for security purposes. I actually think it's because it would really congest things. Like if people are taking photos, you would never make it out of there.
Yeah. You'd never even get to the end. You'd never be able to see it, especially when you only have 20 minutes at each place.
I mean, it's probably about a almost 45-degree descent in there.
So there's a large tunnel that they bored with, one of those drill machines, and you can walk down that, and that's tall. You don't have to duck down at all for that. And I timed it. It was 8 minutes to get from the top to the bottom. Then the actual tunnel that the North Koreans dug is when you start. And then that part, like, you are bent down like this.
Yeah, they give you hard helmets to wear, so for the taller people. Kids don't have to wear them because they can obviously walk through them just fine.
There were part of the times that I could just tilt my head like this and I could stand up pretty much straight, but he was hunched over like the whole time.
Yeah, I was aching.
Yeah.
But it was really, really neat. You can see like where they put the dynamite to blast their way through. And at the very end, it's all sealed off. And that's when you're about 100 meters from North Korea.
So who sealed it off?
I don't know. Was it the Americans?
The South Koreans created a barricade because you could still come through to North Korea if it wasn't barricaded. So they did.
Oh, that's true. So they wouldn't cross the border.
Yeah, so they did a barricade with
a metal barricade with like a
small window. So they did 3 of those. So one barricade with a window, and then a few feet away is the second one, and then another third one. So I'm assuming if they got through the first one, somebody would know, and then the other 2 are there to put a stop to it.
So super fascinating. That's pretty much all there is to see on that stop. Once you get out, there's some like unification statues.
So I have a question. What do you think the windows are for? Do you think the windows are to stop somebody that's trying to come through, or do you think it's to look through?
I think they're to look through. I think it's to see if someone's trying to get through.
And what if they are?
then you put a gun through there.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Maybe that's what the windows are for.
No, I think when it was done in the 50s, they didn't have, all the high-tech security stuff.
Right. Yeah, so the rest of the stuff at the third, there is a souvenir shop. You can pick up shirts like we obviously got.
Mm-hmm.
We also got a sweater. It was just such a unique place. We are not big t-shirts.
Oh, that was the one with the North Korean chocolate.
Yeah, we got some chocolate-covered soybeans that are very popular in North Korea.
From North Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So chocolate-covered soybeans, which also begs the question, like, how do we have chocolate-covered soybeans from North Korea if tensions are so high and we can't go back and forth? These are the types of things we disagree about. So, just to give you a little...
You could also buy So I think they replaced the barbed wire fences repeatedly, and you can buy pieces of the barbed wire fence. For about $20, you get a little plaque with a piece of the...
I kind of wish we had done that, because we always take something back from our trips, and that would have been, since this was such a unique experience, that would have been...
We got t-shirts, so...
Yeah, that's like not something we can...
Okay, so those are the tunnels. Let's move on.
All right, so also at the tunnels, that's where the big DMZ letters are that you can take a picture with. There's the globe of the two separate...
Pushing them together.
Yeah. All right, so from the tunnel, then we went up to the Dora Observatory. So it's called Dora Observatory because that is the name of the mountain. And the mountain used to be a lookout point over Quezon City until the North Koreans decided that they were going to start doing nuclear tests there. So that was a city that was occupied and it was lived in, and then the North Koreans started setting off atomic bombs.
It's also where the name Dora the Explorer comes from.
All right.
Which I have no idea.
All right. So the things that you can see there. You can see the village that has been built. It's a propaganda village. Now, we don't know...
It's like a big city, though. A village is kind of a
That
big city.
city is Quezon City.
Oh, that is...
Did you not see the village up front?
No, I couldn't.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, you should.
I didn't notice it.
Yeah. So it's just a very small village. There's probably a couple dozen homes, and they're just very small and quaint, and nobody lives there, and they call it the propaganda village just to show how nice the villages are in North Korea and how nice it is to live there, because they look very nice. It's very laid out very well, and it looks very pleasing to the eye. But since that is the demilitarized zone and it's under constant surveillance, they never see anybody living there, anybody going in, anybody coming out, nobody throwing blueberries. It's just quiet all the time.
Yeah.
So you can see that. So one side is, from there, you can see one side is North Korea and one side is South Korea. And you can see them at the top of this lookout, and you can look out on both sides.
So it was really fun. We had our telescopic lens on our camera. We were able to take a lot of photos of the other side. And
they also have free
binoculars up there, too. So it really gave you as good a glimpse of North Korea as you're going to get. I imagine even from the GSA, you can't see anything better.
Oh no, yeah.
So that was one of the highlights. A really cool spot.
Yeah, and also one thing you can see from here that they pointed out to us on our bus ride is you can see. So the Han River is what borders kind of this specific area in the demilitarized zone. And what a lot of defectors do is they come across the Han River. So both sides are barbed wire. Now, the barbed wire is not to keep out any defectors. Of course, South Korea welcomes any and all defectors, but it is there to keep out any army or military personnel that may be trying to infiltrate or come across or invade. And the barbed wire goes all the way down into Seoul. There is a period where the Han River changes direction, and so it comes all the way down to there. And one specific time of year that there are a lot of people crossing over is when the Han River freezes. And so this is necessary because large groups of people could...
Yeah, you can walk right on the Han River. People can escape or travel over there.
So that was one of the interesting things to see is on the drive all the way back is just barbed wire, and it's on both sides. So it's on the North Korean side, it's also on the South Korean side. So it's very clear and present, the tensions that are going on right there.
And what's fascinating on that too is on the other side of the Han River, you can see the mountains of North Korea, or the hills, I guess they are, and there are no trees on them at all.
Yeah, especially contrasting with South Korea, which is lush and trees everywhere. It's green and just all manner of vegetation, and then just sparse bare over on the North Korean side.
And so we're told by our bus driver that the that the trees actually had all been picked clean for firewood. But we kind of think maybe it's because then there are no hiding places without the trees there. So either way.
Another interesting thing that we wanted to bring up is about the Freedom Bridge and the bridge that that the train crosses over.
Yeah.
Is that when it was built, Mr. Hyundai himself, the person who...
The founder of Hyundai is actually from he was born in North Korea.
Yeah, so after the Korean War, he was stuck on the South Korean side, and he couldn't go back to North Korea. So when while he was here...
founded Hyundai, which, as you know, became pretty big. And then as a tribute to his North Koreans, he sent 1,000... Was it 1,000? 1,001.
1,001, yeah.
1,001 cows to North Korea
as a gift.
Yep. And so they put them in Hyundai vans, trucks, and drove them across the Freedom Bridge.
Yeah.
Which is also known as the Cow Bridge.
Yes. Yes.
So very cool.
Yes. Very fascinating. All right. So there are two flagpoles that you can see from the observatory. One is North Korea and one is South Korea. Now, for several years, they would raise their flags, and South Korea would raise theirs higher than North Korea, and then North Korea would erect a higher flagpole, and they would raise theirs higher than South Korea, and then North Korea would raise theirs higher, until eventually South Korea just gave up. So you will see the North Korean flag raised higher than the South Korean flag, and that was a little tension. Another tension that happened, which we found really interesting, is there are also loudspeakers here, and there are loudspeakers in that propaganda village, and they would send over loudspeakers, and they would send over propaganda messages and propaganda music that they listened to in North Korea. And so the military soldiers would just have to listen to it all day long, this propaganda. So what did the soldiers decide that they would do?
They decided to blast K-pop. So they started really loud, popular K-pop music, and that pretty much
ended it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to note. I wonder if that is why the North Korea... I mean, it's a good question. How did the North Koreans know about K-pop music, and if that was any instigator into them developing a love for it?
Well, and what I hear too is a lot of the K-pop and K-dramas are smuggled across the border on like CDs and stuff, and so a lot of that is over, but it's against the law to watch it, so you can get in pretty big trouble for listening to K-pop or watching any of the K-dramas. Some of the defector YouTube videos I watched say that they would. If they got some of this contraband, they would make sure all the windows were shut, all their doors were locked, and they would put a blanket over their head and over the TV so they could watch some of the popular South Korean dramas.
Yeah.
Don't know how true it is, but that's just some of the stuff I watched.
Another thing that you can see is the electricity on the South Korean versus the North Korean side. On the South Korean side, they are tall, white electrical towers that you always see with the crosses on them. And then on the North Korean side, they turn to iron, and they're much smaller. You can tell there's not as much wattage that goes through them, and they are much more sparse. You can't see as many of them littered throughout. So that's an interesting comparison. So there's lots of comparisons that you can see from the observatory. You definitely can see far into the...
Quezon City.
Into Quezon City, exactly. And there's a lot to witness in your tour guide. It's one of the benefits of having a tour guide is that you can really get a lot of that history and hear a lot of these anecdotal stories about what has happened.
Very fascinating. And your tour guides as well, when you have the option of booking a tour, you can choose, English or Korean speaking.
Well, there's a variety of languages.
You can choose to have a defector actually give you the tour so they can talk about their experiences in North Korea directly.
Yeah, and there were mixed reviews on those too. So I'm glad we did the tour we did, although now I find out that there's a $10 tour.
Yeah, I know, right?
And then that's a guided tour that...
Yeah.
And
as well, like on our van too, we had Russians, Slovakians, UK.
Mexicans.
There was people from Spain. Mm-hmm. There was only a few Americans. We had some people from New York behind us.
Connecticut,
sorry.
We had a few people from Connecticut behind us.
But they tell people they're from New York
yeah.
because no one knows where Connecticut is.
Another story, which one of the reasons I really enjoyed the tour was that we did get to hear a lot of history between North and South Korea. And this, I didn't know about this, but after the whole division that occurred in the 50s, after Japan stopped occupying Korea as a slave nation, after the end of World War II, and they were divided between the Soviet Union and American control, and then they developed their own governments that was Korean centralized. there were continued wars. So the Korean War lasted into the late 50s, and there were still battles between North and South Korea and who wanted to take control of the entire peninsula. It got so far that the North Koreans invaded South Korea and they controlled the entire occupation, the entire country, all the way down to just that small city of Busan, which is on the eastern southern coast. And then South Korea joined forces and they pushed all of the soldiers back all the way up to the Chinese border. Then the Chinese got involved and said, well, we don't want to be invaded. So they joined forces with North Korea and they pushed them all the way back again. So that is kind of where we're at right now with the division and where it's demarcated. And if you don't know, it's along the 38th parallel.
I always hear about that a lot, but didn't know what it meant until we came to Korea. So yay, world schooling. So so if you talk about the population distinction between the two countries, is South Korea has about 50 million people, and as far as we know, North Korea has about 25 million people. So in South Korea, the young men are required by law to join the military and serve for 2 years.
It's anywhere between 20 months and 24 months. So there's distinctions that I don't really understand.
About 2 years. And in North Korea, actually, every male of the population is required to serve for 10 years because they have half the population in South Korea.
And the last census that was done was actually in 2008, so over a decade ago. And the census, of course, was done by North Koreans. And they stated that they had exactly 25 million residents. Wow. So quite fascinating. After we stayed at the observatory for an entire 20 minutes, inside the observatory, there's also a movie that you can watch, and it tells you a little bit about the history. There's also a topographical map that is inside the observatory that you can view, and it'll show you the red line about the division between the two countries, and then it'll show you some of the cities and where they are located in approximation to South Korea. So just a couple other interesting things. There is a cafe there, and a little outside. There were some swings, although they were blocked off.
Yeah, for some reason they were not allowed.
So, all right. From there, we went to the Dorasan station. Now, we've mentioned a few things about this. The Dorasan station was so interesting to me.
No, it's super interesting. So it links the subway systems of South Korea to North Korea. Yeah. So potentially you could take subways and connections all the way up into North Korea, then into China, then into Russia, then into the Europe, right?
Yeah,
so this would connect basically most of the world.
Yeah, it's the Asian portion of the Transcontinental Railroad. You could take it into India. I mean, you can traverse that entire side of the globe, and it would start in South Korea, but of course it's cut off right now because North Korea is insular.
So one of the big photo ops inside there is an actual, like, the overhead subway sign that says the train to Pyeongyang. And so a lot of people stand under there, us included, to point at Pyeongyang. Hey, we're going to Pyeongyang, which isn't open right now. Yeah. So they have the subway line, obviously, because it stops right there and there isn't a lot of houses or anywhere to go. It only runs twice a day. So they have one line that runs in the morning, I think around 8:30. And then it goes back down into Seoul at 4:30 p.m.
Yes.
So you can take that line if you want to take the self-guided tour or purchase a tour once you get there.
So the stop right before Dorasan Station goes to the Peace Park, and then you take it further up to Dorasan Station to see that. And it is relatively close to the Dora Observatory. From what we've read is if you get to the Peace Park and then you take the train up to Dorasan Station, you could basically do all of these items with on a self-guided tour through walking. Although the one thing you cannot do is go to the third tunnel. You can't do that on your own. That's something that has to be done with a guide.
Yep. And just what it kind of like clicked with me seeing the map of how that subway would actually connect so much of the world to South Korea. What kind of an effect the unification would have on South Korea and North Korea as well.
Well, and how much power North Korea holds.
Well, just so much shipping would go through to the ocean into that part of South Korea. It would be a huge benefit to both countries. It
would benefit the whole world. So really, they're holding a lot of power. I mean, it's really to their detriment. Really, they could really utilize a lot of that for.
Lots of opportunity there.
So, all right. So, another thing about that station is there's also a souvenir shop. There's restrooms. There's restrooms at every stop along the way. But you can, let me try to think, you can see the map, you can see the sign. I guess that's really all there is to do that. But
there's
it's a functioning station.
There's some arts. Yeah, it's your typical subway station.
It's ready to go.
Yeah, it's a nice station.
If they opened up the borders tomorrow, you could get on a train and you could go. It is functioning. It's ready to go. It's got seats. It's got loading docks. It's got ticket receivers. I mean, it is legit. It's ready to go.
It's ready to go on the South Korean side.
Right.
So assuming it's all connected,
yeah,
as proposed, you could take that line right into Pyongyang. Check out the capital of North Korea.
All right, so this was an incredible world schooling opportunity. We definitely try and take advantage of learning about the history wherever we go to a place, and it's fascinating to hear a different side of what the division means to people that actually live right here.
Yeah, I think, so here's my takeaway. It's like, for me, coming from the States, I think my perspective is forever changed. Having been here and visited that side of North Korea, it made me question a lot of things that have been taught and maybe perceptions that have been instilled on me being from the American side. It kind of opened my mind up a little bit. And I'm really, at this point, I'm really rooting for both countries to unify for the benefit of anyone who may be suffering on the other side. It's just really sad. As far as the wars go that have happened, the atrocity of wars, I'm sure that there's bad stuff that happens on both sides, and it's just horrible. And it kind of, whether I'm coming here to South and North Korea or going to Hiroshima and learning the different countries' perspective on things, we like to keep that open mind as we go visit other countries and learn about the culture.
I want to say history is told by the side that participated. And so America is naturally going to have a different perspective of the sequence of events that a country such as Korea or Japan or anywhere else in the country is going to have. And it really gives you a worldview when you are able to learn about both sides of what happened, because each are going to tell their specific side of the story. So I really find that fascinating and interesting. And I think it gives our children an opportunity to recognize that everybody has their unique spot.
Yep.
And one thing that I always think about is, when we go on these adventures and have these really incredible opportunities where we get to learn so much is, if Hyundai, Mr. Hyundai, was kept in North Korea, then we would no longer have the Hyundai car company. My family drove a Hyundai growing up, so that's a very personal note to me, that had he stayed in North Korea, that we would not have driven a Hyundai when I was growing up. Of course, we would have had a different car, but we had that specific car because of the conflict that has happened there.
Yeah. Very fascinating. So that is our trip to the DMZ. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. If you have an opportunity to come here, that is just, I think, one of our number one picks of something that must be done.
Yeah.
To explore and learn about this world that we live in.
Yeah, and don't be nervous about taking your children. You are on the South Korean side. You get to see so much of South Korean history. There were several children on our tour. They weren't all as young as Eclair. Eclair was definitely the youngest, and then, of course, Molasses. But there were several children that were grade school age, that were about the twins' age, and it was very eye-opening to them. As Penelope said, she really enjoyed learning about history. Yeah. It definitely gives them a permanence of their place in the world and how they can affect change, which, of course, is what we all want to do in our lives, is just be a force for good.
Yeah, and as far as traveling with children in South Korea and being an American, I think it's one of the safest countries we've ever visited.
And they love children. In fact, we encountered an American who was rude to our child, but at no point has a South Korean ever been rude to our child in Korea. And
I think we might have mentioned it in the past, but in the entire world, South Korea has the lowest reproduction rates. So they extra love children here because they need more of them in their country.
Yes.
So,
all right. Well, thank you again for listening. If you do have any questions about the DMZ or taking children on a DMZ tour or going on a DMZ tour yourself, we're happy to answer any questions. In fact, like we mentioned, once again, we will say it over and over again. It was one of our most favorite and incredible experiences that we've had here. We are happy to answer questions. You can send us an email at contactus@diapersonaplane.com. Leave a comment in the comment section or hit us up on one of our social media channels. You can find us on MeWe, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we would always love to hear from you. Please hit subscribe, ring the notification bell, and like this video, please.